Somewhere in Japan, on a beautiful sunny day, young Harris, full of ambition, trains hard with the dream of becoming a professional boxer. As he turned a corner, Harris became momentarily distracted. He accidentally bumped into an elderly man walking in the opposite direction. Harris quickly apologized to the man, and just like that, a simple apology turned into a conversation. The man introduced himself as Thomas, Harris's neighbor from a few houses down. Harris took the man home, while the man's wife was waiting at the door. Harris felt guilty and repeatedly apologized to them.
すいませんでした。
夫ももう大丈夫そうですし、気にしないでください。
こちらこそよろしくお願いします。君、いいパンチ持ってるね。
It was during this conversation that Harris learned something unexpected. Thomas's wife used to be a boxing coach. Not just any coach, but a well-respected one who had trained several regional champions. She had stepped away from her career after marriage to focus on family, but her love for the sport had never faded. You should meet her, Thomas said with a smile. She'd enjoy hearing about your training, and maybe she could give you a few tips. Harris felt a mixture of surprise and gratitude. He had been training mostly on his own, with only occasional advice from online videos and a few friends. The idea of getting guidance from someone with real coaching experience felt like a rare opportunity. They agreed to meet later that week. As they parted ways, Harris couldn't help but notice how light his steps felt. It wasn't just the sunny weather or the easy conversation. It was the sense that something important had shifted. That day, Harris reflected on the encounter. Life often throws unexpected moments our way, he thought, but the key is to stay open to them. He didn't know where this new connection would lead, but he felt a quiet sense of hope. And for someone chasing a big dream, hope was as essential as training itself. 2 days later, the sun was already beginning to set when Harris knocked gently on the door of Thomas's home. He felt a slight nervousness, not from meeting new people, but from the possibility of gaining advice that could change his training entirely. Thomas answered the door with his usual friendly smile. Inside, the home felt warm and lived in. Framed photos lined the walls, snapshots of family moments, scenic places, and, to Harris's surprise, several images of boxing matches. In one picture, a young woman stood ringside, wearing a coach's jacket, her eyes focused on a boxer mid-match. Harris spoke honestly about how he started boxing in high school, how he admired the discipline of the sport, and how he wanted to compete professionally someday. He didn't hide the fact that he was training mostly alone, with only limited resources. Ayaka listened without interrupting, then leaned forward slightly. Boxing isn't just about power or speed. It's about patience, focus, and the ability to keep going, even when every part of you wants to stop. Do you understand what I mean? Yes, Harris replied, though he knew she was speaking of something deeper than just the sport. They moved into a small training space in the back of the house. A converted garage with a punching bag, a speed bag, and some worn but well-maintained equipment. The air smelled faintly of leather and dedication. Over the next hour, Ayaka showed him footwork drills, defensive moves, and ways to build endurance without risking injury. Her teaching style was encouraging but honest, praising what he did well while pointing out what could be improved. Harris felt exhausted but energized. He had learned more in one evening than he had in months of solo practice. As he prepared to leave, Ayaka handed him a small notebook. Write down every workout, every thought about your progress, every obstacle you face. It will help you see your growth, and on difficult days, it will remind you how far you've come. Walking home, Harris realized that something had shifted again, this time more profoundly. He no longer felt like he was chasing his dream alone. There were people willing to share their time, knowledge, and encouragement with him. And that, he thought, was worth as much as any victory in the ring. Weeks passed, and Harris's routine became more structured than ever. Every morning, he ran laps around the park before heading to work. In the evenings, he trained under Ayaka's watchful eye, refining his movements, building stamina, and strengthening his mental focus. At first, the progress was visible. His punches were sharper, his balance steadier, and his breathing more controlled. But then, as often happens with long-term goals, he hit a plateau. It started subtly. One day, Harris felt unusually tired before training. The next day, his timing on the speed bag was off. A week later, he found himself frustrated that his punches weren't landing with the same precision. The more he noticed these small dips, the more he began to question himself. One afternoon, after a particularly difficult sparring session, Harris sat alone in the quiet corner of the gym. He replayed every mistake in his mind, the missed punches, the slow reactions, the lack of energy. It felt as if all the effort of the past weeks was slipping away. Thomas found him there, staring at the floor. "Tough day?" he asked gently. Harris sighed. "I don't know what's happening. I'm training harder than ever, but I feel like I'm going backward." Thomas sat down beside him. Progress isn't always a straight climb. Sometimes you move forward, then sideways, then forward again. The important thing is that you don't stop. Later that evening, Ayaka joined them. She listened to Harris's concerns without interrupting, then said something that caught him off guard. "Do you know why most people quit?" she asked. Harris shook his head. "It's not because they lack talent," she said. "It's because they don't know how to handle the days when progress is invisible. The truth is, every athlete, every person chasing a dream will face these moments. Your choice is simple. See it as a wall, or see it as a hill. A wall stops you. A hill tests you." Her words settled into Harris's mind like a seed. He realized that his frustration wasn't a sign of failure. It was an invitation to grow in a different way. From that day forward, Ayaka adjusted his training. She introduced lighter sessions focused on technique, mental exercises like visualization, and recovery routines to prevent burnout. She reminded him to listen to his body, not just his ambition. Thomas, on the other hand, made sure Harris's motivation stayed alive outside the gym. He would drop by with homemade meals, share stories of famous athletes who overcame slumps, and sometimes simply sit with Harris, talking about life beyond boxing. Gradually, Harris began to feel the weight lift. His energy returned, his movements regained fluidity, and his confidence started to rebuild, not from quick wins, but from enduring the slow days without giving up. One evening, after landing a perfect combination during sparring, Ayaka smiled in quiet approval. "There it is," she said. "The breakthrough always comes when you decide to keep going." That night, Harris walked home under the glow of streetlights, feeling different. He knew he hadn't reached his ultimate goal yet, but he also knew something far more important, that he could face setbacks without losing his direction. Dreams, he realized, aren't just built in moments of excitement. They're built in the quiet hours, in the patient days, and in the choice to keep showing up, no matter how steep the road becomes. Spring arrived in the small Japanese town, and with it came a fresh sense of energy. The park where Harris used to run in the early mornings was now lined with blooming cherry blossoms. The soft petals floated gently in the breeze, reminding him that seasons change, and so do people. By now, Harris's routine felt like second nature. His body was stronger, his reflexes quicker, and his mindset steadier than ever. More importantly, he had learned to approach his dream with patience and resilience. One evening, Ayaka and Thomas invited him over for dinner. The table was filled with simple but delicious dishes: grilled fish, fresh vegetables, and steaming bowls of miso soup. As they ate, Thomas leaned back in his chair with a satisfied smile. "You've been putting in the work, Harris," he said. "Have you thought about what comes next?" Harris nodded. "I have. I want to enter my first local amateur tournament, not because I think I'll win easily, but because I'm ready to see where I stand." Ayaka's eyes lit up. That's exactly the right mindset. Competing isn't just about the outcome. It's about testing your skills under pressure, learning from the experience, and meeting others who share your passion. They spent the rest of the evening discussing training plans for the weeks ahead. Ayaka emphasized maintaining balance, pushing himself, but also allowing time for recovery. Thomas promised to be in the front row, cheering him on. In the days leading up to the tournament, Harris trained with renewed focus. Every movement felt deliberate. He worked on refining his footwork, keeping his guard up, and maintaining composure under pressure. Whenever fatigue crept in, he remembered Ayaka's lessons about patience and Thomas's reminders about perseverance. The morning of the tournament, Harris stood in front of the mirror. His reflection no longer looked like a young man merely chasing a dream. It looked like someone who had built the discipline to live it. When it was his turn to step into the ring, he walked in with quiet confidence. The match that followed wasn't perfect. He made mistakes, missed opportunities, and had to work hard to stay on the defensive at times. But each round, he adapted. He remembered Ayaka's guidance, controlled his breathing, and focused on the next move instead of dwelling on the last. He had given everything he had. He knew there would be more challenges ahead, more days where the road felt steep, but he also knew he would keep moving forward, one step at a time. Because dreams aren't just about the finish line. They're about who you become along the way. And for Harris, that journey had only just begun.